Peter, I know who you are. I've had the privilege of knowing you for a long time in my career, and knowing of you even longer than that. Thanks for being here, first of all.
My pleasure. And you're my friend, and I'm really, really happy to be here with you.
Awesome. Well, likewise. And why don't you, for some of the folks that are they're where I was years ago, where they're hearing certain names pop up all throughout the industry. It's the same guys that are always and girls that are always on the same cover, magazines, and they're celebrities. I think that every industry has celebrities. I talk about sports. If we had to name 5 celebrities from tennis to football to hockey to basketball or technology, we could do that. And in our space, we have celebrities, and you're among the top of that list. For those people that don't know you, one of my objectives is to get them to have the opportunity to know you, right? So why don't you tell people your background a little bit, and then I'm probably going to peel you back and scratch the paint all the way back as far as I get.
Sure. To be honest with you, it's not all that exciting. It's it's pretty trivial. I'm an electrical engineer by training. My background was power electronics, and that's what I really liked in college. And then my first job was exactly in that domain. It was a fascinating job. It was a company that built the power electronic system for the early U.S. fusion program. That was really a fun, cool job. We built the power supplies for the tokamaks at MIT, at Cornell, at Princeton, at the General Atomic in San Diego. That's when the fusion was supposed to save the planet and be the energy that will eliminate any other form of energy. It was a very exciting time. At that time, we thought that we're going to have fusion available to the world in a few years. And here we are 30 years later, and we still don't have fusion. But it was a fun job. I really enjoyed it. That was my first real job. And then I.
When was that? I'm sorry. Did you go to school in the U.S.?
I went to school. I went to school in Romania. I was born there, and then we came here. And I finished my engineering school in Romania. The system is different. It's a 5-year program.
When did you graduate from college?
I graduated from college in 1975.
So in 75 back then, you go through a 5-year program in Romania.
Yeah, right.
And then you go right into like an EIT process so that you get ready to become a PE, or how did it work?
No, there's no. It's a totally different system. No, you get the job right away, and I had the job there for a very short period of time because my wife and I decided to come here, to move, to come to the United States, and indeed we came, and I started working, and at night I got my MBA. Took me a long time because it's hard to get an MBA at night while working, and I was traveling. But I did it, and I'm glad I did it. So after that first company, I joined a small firm that manufactured power supply, primarily for military application.
Was this in Southern California?
Yeah, it was in LA. It was in LA. It was one of those companies that have built the same standard power supply for years. They really didn't need me. They have standard product. It was well established, and it was such an easy job that. The lack of stress in that job stressed me so badly that I couldn't take it. So
the lack of stress stressed you out?
Yeah, exactly.
That's funny.
And so I left after 6 months, and I joined a little company that was one of the early pioneers of the solar photovoltaic business. It made infrastructure components to go to complement solar panels. It was, those were the early days of solar power, solar energy. It was interesting, but it was way ahead of its time. It didn't live very long. So my next stop was a company.
Let me back you up if I can. I'm not trying to continuously interrupt you, but like, Peter, at what point did you realize, like, I want to be an engineer?
Early on, my father was an engineer, although a chemical engineer. He was hoping that I'll become a chemical engineer, and I hated chemistry. I was not very good, but I liked physics. That was my favorite discipline, and it was a natural thing for me. I don't have any talent. I cannot play music. I'm not very good at drawing or arts or anything else. But I enjoyed math and physics, and that was a natural thing for me. And I always liked. I always liked to study. I really enjoyed my years in college. I really liked electrical engineering. And my discipline, as I said, was power electronics. That was a field that served me well in my career, because pretty much everything I have done in my first 20-some years of my career were in power electronics. When I was very fortunate, we came to this country, and I was able to get the job 2 weeks after arriving here.
So how did that whole process go? Because you said you and your wife decided to be here. Is she from Romania as well?
Yeah. We, my wife and I met in our freshman year in high school. Ooh. So we've been together for,
still just getting to know each other, it sounds like.
Yeah, we're still working on it. Eventually, I think we're going to get to know each other.
Nice.
Yeah, it was, we started dating really the summer between high school and college, but we knew each other. We grew up in the same neighborhood, and we had the same friends.
Do you guys always want to come to the States? Is that one of the things?
I always wanted to come to the States.
Why was that?
I don't know. There was some fascinating thing about this United States. I grew up with that, and by the time I was probably 15, 16, I said that's where my future ought to be. And I always wanted to be in California.
Why California?
I think either
Hollywood?
No, more like Beach Boys, and the fact that it never rains here, and and a few other reasons. But
were you still trying to pursue that modeling career at the same time, and it just lent yourself to
that's right. Yes,
you'd be a model
and a movie star. Yeah, it took me about 15 minutes to realize that I'm not going to be a movie star in Hollywood, so I better do something else. When we arrived here, between my wife and I, we had about $50 between the two of us, and then our lucky break was that they lost my suitcase.
That's a lucky break,
because they gave me $50. In those days, the airlines were a lot more generous, so they gave me $50, and I got back my suitcase the next day. But our net worth doubled in one night, and said, "Boy, this is a great country."
How about that? What year was that, you think? If you graduated in 75.
Yeah, that was 78.
Okay. So you worked there for a few years, and then you and your wife were like, to hell with this. We're moving to America. In fact, we're going to LA, where it's cheap to live.
That's right.
So I'm gonna go. Was there like a Romanian population there at the time?
No.
With your family or?
No, I had an aunt and a couple of cousins that lived in LA. So they were very helpful. They helped us initially. But look, I cannot say enough about this country. I don't think that I was so fortunate, so lucky. But I don't think that our fortune would have been the same in any other parts of the world. I mean, what this country gave me and gave my family is unique. No country is like America. No country can give a poor immigrant that barely speaks English and doesn't have any money, doesn't have any background, doesn't have anything, and gave me so much. And I was able to, sure, I had to work hard. I had to pay my dues, but nowhere else a person can achieve what someone can achieve in this country. I cannot stress
Listen,
this.
that's an amazing story. I had no idea about that part. It's super inspiring, and I do want to take that all away because you came here. I had no idea how humbling it was. It sounds like your early start, and I'm sure at that time you never thought, hey, one day I'm going to be the CEO of the number one, design firm in the world on data centers and have it acquired by HP. So like, I want to go all the way back. You're talking about how you came over here and within a few weeks you got a job, right? Which is fantastic. And then you were stressed out because it was so boring. You didn't have enough stress to be fulfilled. So you went and you found a job in advanced sciences that still is emerging technology that doesn't have it has an adoption rate that's probably way different than it was back in your early day. But like, I want to tie together, see if I could discover if you became an electrical engineer because of your fascination with energy and power and the grid as a whole, or, all these alternative forms of energy, or like march me along that path because you went there and then you were bored and I interrupted you.
Well, it's a discovery process. As you grow professionally and as the world changes around you, you discover things and you learn things and you adjust your focus and you adjust your interests. So when I started. Ironically, it was in the middle of the oil crisis after the Middle East embargo, and I remember people queuing at the gas stations, and that's when all of a sudden solar power and fusion became important. But then my next job was a company called Teledyne iNet. At that time, that was the premier power electronic firm that got into what is known today as UPSs. UPSs, uninterruptible power supplies. And then those are the very early days of data centers. It was a different definition.
'80s, yeah. Is that like did Teledyne become Power, which became Eaton?
No, that was Exide Electronic. Teledyne kind of disappeared. It probably had the best engineering team. That doesn't include me, but there are terrific engineers there that designed them, probably the most advanced, the most reliable UPS system in the world at that time. The problem was the company was not geared towards mass production. It was almost everything was custom built, and this is not a sustainable business model. And unfortunately, after a number of years, it kind of died because it was overtaken by companies like Liebert, Emerson,
MGE.
That was MGE because it became acquired a number of companies. EPE became MGE, became Schneider Electric, and so on. But it was a fun thing, and after a few years of working at Teledyne, I became chief engineer for the 400 hertz production line. 400 hertz were, in those days, you still had the big IBM mainframe, the 3070, the 370s and 8081s, and they're running on 400 hertz because of the footprint. So I designed these UPS systems for these kind of applications. That also power converters for aircrafts, for military. It was a variety of products, but the main focus was UPSs, and it gave me it gave me the first glimpse of what a data center is. Those were the golden days of data center, the early days. Fascinating times. The only
This is mid 80s. What is this?
that was mid 80s, mid 80s.
Who were around? I mean, was it like Exodus? Were they around back then?
No, none of them. It was all banks and financial institutions. The biggest customers were the major banks. That's when they all operated with IBM mainframes, and it was still the time of mainframes. The distributed didn't came around yet, but also some government agencies, Social Security, the IRS, and companies like these that the early adopters of computer technologies.
What were they doing back then? Was it just block redundant 2N?
No, they didn't do it. No, none of them existed. None of them existed. The concept of dual core and reliability definition was totally different. It was a wild west when it comes to data centers.
You called it the golden ages.
Yeah.
So it was all enterprise data centers.
It was all enterprise data centers. A few of them. It was interesting. It's maybe I shouldn't say that, but in those days, for these type of companies, for the big banks, big financial institutions, the data center in itself, and in particular their power protection, was the single most important thing. They absolutely could not afford to fail.
Was it from the downtime or the damage that a spike in the grid could?
No, the reliability of the box. It was it's not. It's different than now. In those days, SCRs or capacitors or the output filter will fail, and that translates into the whole thing. There is no redundancy in the way we define it today. It was the UPS was it. If the UPS failed, the whole thing failed. And on the other hand, the concept of 7x24 didn't quite exist. Companies would shut down their whole data center for
an upgrade or
for testing, for servicing. Yeah, a few times a year. I got my first glimpse of that, and I spent about 10 years at Teledyne, almost. So I learned quite a bit. Because
Teledyne, where was it based out of? In Southern California?
In LA.
It was in LA. So
Yeah.
Was it close to where you lived and stuff?
It was, I don't know, half an hour. It was a decent commute.
I got you.
Emerson was also there. There were a number of companies in this domain that were in that part of California. But it was a fun time. It was interesting. And then after, as I said, about 10 years, 8 to 10 years of that, I decided that it's time for me to get a little closer to the data center action, and I joined a small consulting firm that did nothing but data centers. So a small firm called PRK. It was based in Redondo Beach around LA. PRK. It has one founder and the partner, and I became the junior partner there.
Is that shop still rolling?
No, it's not around anymore. It disappeared a long time ago. But we had a bunch of really high, big names clients. Merrill Lynch and Bankers Trust, New York Stock Exchange, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Charles Schwab, Fidelity Investments, and I spent half of my time, maybe not half, but at least 25% of my time in New York City. We had an office in New York, one in California, and I spent a lot of time in New York. I had an apartment in New York, and I would go there regularly to run our office in New York City, and spend a lot of time coordinating and managing these maintenance activities. Go to New York Stock Exchange and shut down the whole floor, and test their infrastructure, the UPSs, the switch gears, circuit breakers, the whole thing. We did a bill of health at least 4 times a year. It was tough. 24 hours of going straight in the middle, starting in the afternoon, and go 24 hours in the week.
I would say they just do that on the weekends, I guess, when the markets were closed.
Weekends. And but the same thing for these financial institutions. They would shut down for a number of hours on a Saturday night, and get back online on Sunday when the markets will open in Japan. I learned quite a bit. That was the best learning experience. I had my intimate knowledge of the UPS systems. I knew. I was involved in designing the first static transfer switches, for instance. I mean,
how old were you then? How old were you when you're involved with those like early stages where you're?
I was in my early 30s.
So when you came here from Romania, were you already married? You and your
we got married right after college in Romania.
Did you already have kids rolling by then too?
No, we had kids much later. We could not afford to have kids, and it's it takes a while to establish, to build.
Sure.
We're happy to get to buy a car at one point, but as I said, it was a journey. It was, but it was a, I think back on my my life and my career, and I still wonder how lucky and how blessed I was. Obviously I owe most of it to my wife. That she put up with me all these years, and it was hard for her because I was traveling so much, and I was working so much for her to. She was working, and she raised 2 wonderful kids, and we're still.
Your grandparents now. You had 3 grandkids?
I have 3 grandkids, the sunshine of my life.
And your kids went to school, like you, your daughter went to Northwestern and then to law school at Cal, and then
Cal. And
you had a son that broke the cardinal sin.
Yeah,
right?
It was hard for him. He went to UCLA. We're still big UCLA fans to these days. And but after UCLA, he went to USC Business School, which was probably a difficult transition for him.
So when you came to the U.S. with your $50 in your pocket and ended up getting lucky and doubling what you're valued at, were you like, hey, in a few years from now, we're going to send kids to the most expensive colleges, like you paid for? I mean, I can't imagine how much money gets laid out for those types of schools, but business school, undergrad school for 2, and law school, you were probably like, yeah, we got this. America's amazing. This will all work out.
Yeah. I had my doubts. My wife didn't. She was always very, very positive, and she always said that we're going to be all right.
That's awesome, man.
It was an interesting journey, and
were you just heads down the whole time? Because you came here with nothing. You were obviously had a chip on your shoulder. You were hungry. You had your engineering degree. You wanted to go become a PE, which you eventually did. You fell in love with the data center side of design, and now you're driving innovation within it by pushing, or advancing designs around STSs. Like, what was fueling you the whole time? Like, what was this passion coming from?
Well, I don't, it's hard to say, but I was always interested in the new stuff. Innovation was, I always looked for the next big thing. It's just, ultimately, you look at how any business evolves. Who said that? I think Gretzky. I don't skate where the puck is. I skate where the puck is going to be, right? So I always looked for the next big things. And when we started EYP,
did you go straight from that P something K thing?
Yeah, okay, yeah.
You went straight from there to EYP. What was is that the next transition that you did?
Yeah, that was the next transition.
How did you find them? Because they were an architect firm, right?
Well, I decided that it's time for me to get my own shop. My partner was not interested in growing the business, and we had some other issues. And I decided that it's time for me to move on. But I didn't have the capital to start. It's starting a business like this that requires a fair amount of capital because you have to hire people, you have to pay them, and you need to start doing projects, get clients, and it's 6 months to 12 months until you start getting revenue. So I did some consulting work for this company called EYP Architects, and they also had an engineering group, but they wanted to get into the data center space. And I talked to them, and we agreed that this is the ideal arrangement. So we built a separate division of this company. I called it EYP Mission Critical Facilities. As a matter of fact, I copyrighted the name. I own the name Mission Critical Facilities. I obviously never collected and I never went after anybody, but...
Wow, I had no idea.
I knew everybody in this industry. Not everybody, but I knew all the good engineers, and I was able to hire them quickly. That was end of the 20th century, 97, 98. And I saw the big thing coming. I saw the internet coming and what it meant. And that's why I really wanted to start my own firm. I knew that it was going to be big.
You knew there was going to be an explosion for demand.
It's going to be big, yeah. But then before that, it was the Y2K. And I decided it might not be a bad idea to monetize that. So we built the first infrastructure group dedicated to data centers that would go out and, I don't know if you probably don't remember, it was too long for a young guy like you.
No, I know exactly where I was and how big of a deal it was, yeah.
But, everybody was trying to test all their equipment because the fear that when the
clocks would roll over,
everything would
start at zero.
UPS would shut down, and the crack and the chillers would shut down, and the BMS would die, and so on. So we formed these teams, and
a little task force. Someone
we
around and check.
Working 7x24. Everybody wanted us because we're the first one to do that. We just didn't have enough people. We couldn't hire enough people. And the next step was the .com explosion. And
real quick though, going back to EYP had a design like an MEP shop, but they were big A. I mean, they were
it was a big architectural firm, and they have some good engineers on the engineering side, but they were doing mostly college and universities, and they were doing some work for AT&T. Not necessarily data centers, but things related to the telecom business. But they really wanted to go more aggressively after the technology space. And we had this arrangement, and I was the founder. With my co-founder was the president of the architectural firm, and he was my partner and my friend. So we started this group, and grew very rapidly. Once again, it was all about getting people.
Was that the biggest challenge back then?
Yeah, for us it was the biggest, because I think we built we designed, I don't know, probably 30-40%, maybe more, of all the .com.
Sure.
Exodus was our biggest client, but we worked for a bunch of other. We worked for AT&T and for Globix, for Global Crossing. I mean, it was a long list, probably 20 different companies.
Was it a pretty, like, a lot of those guys and girls that you were starting off with back in those days? You still friends with a lot of those people?
All of them.
Okay, so
all of them. Yeah. For me, it's the most rewarding thing, the absolute most rewarding thing, going around and talking to ex-UYP people, and I heard that at least 10 times, maybe more. People saying that the best year of my career were my year at UYP. It was a nice environment. I think people liked there, and people like to work for a winner, for a company that is doing well. And the company had a very, very good reputation, grew very rapidly. We opened offices all over the country from New York.
You guys had New York, London. I thought you guys had.
We had an office in London. We have an office in New York, Washington, Chicago,
Were
San
you
Francisco.
only doing data centers, or were you primarily?
Mostly data center. 90% was data centers.
So you guys were the preeminent data center experts.
Were.
Who did you have to run into? Like, who were you? Were you in like Siska Hennessy stumbling?
Yeah, they were there, but we were at that time the only firm were 100% dedicated to data centers, and we had more engineers. You know this better than anybody. Designing a data center is a delicate thing. You cannot afford to make mistake there. A mistake there is catastrophic, and the design costs a lot of money, and it's also very disruptive. And so you have to have experienced people. So how do you get experienced people in the domain that doesn't, there is no college or university which
with data center experience, yeah. So what did you do?
So I pretty much hired everybody I knew that had any kind of experience in the data centers first. And then we developed a program to train people, and a lot of them grew to become some of the top engineers in this domain, and they still operate to this day. Some of the engineers were part of the EYP engineering group, the original engineering group, were also very talented, and they stayed with the company, and they became part of the core engineering management team. What
was the goal when you did that, though? Was it to be ahead of the curve for the industry? But did you always have did you plan on being when HP came in and?
Well, that was later, but at least for me, it was always to be the best there is. If you do something, you better do it better than anybody else. Otherwise, do something else. Nobody can be the best at everything. So you pick a domain, a niche if you want, and work on that, specialize in that, and then you can control the market. And that's what I was trying to do. But also this innovation drive. Good example was right now everybody's using that, but Exodus, the head of engineering at Exodus, came to me once and said, these designs, in those days you had 2N architecture, two big systems, but it was very difficult to scale. When a bank builds a data center, they pretty much know what the load is, and you can design and build based on those expectations. A early colocation business like Exodus or Equinix or Level 3, or they were the players, big players in those days. They don't know who the next customer is going to be, how big it's going to be, how long it's going to take. So he came to me and said, I want a design that will enable me to grow as the business grows, and I don't have to invest to buy all this equipment day one and keep it idle for years. So that's that's when I came up with the concept of block redundant. That block redundant, which became distributed redundant, and pretty much probably 90% of all the data center being built today have that kind of architecture. But that's how it started, and it was adopted to everybody.
Was there like an uptime? Like, what was the authority that said this is this tier, or like this is what the criteria is to be classified as X, Y, and Z? Like, this is early stage. I mean, it's wild west. I still feel like it is sometimes, right? It's still evolving and changing so quickly.
It is.
But back in those days, you guys were really making it as you went. We were pioneering.
Yeah,
right?
it was, and it was a race. Yeah, it was. If you look at how the business was conducted before, building a data center for a financial institution, for instance, would take a couple of years. It was a very elaborate process, a very, very clearly defined process. It was very expensive. It was not unusual in the mid to late 90s for a data center to cost $20 million per megawatt.
And how big were you guys built? How big were the data centers back in those days that you guys were designing? Like 3, 6, 9?
A 3 megawatt data center was a big data center.
Yeah, for sure. Now that's a rounding error, right?
Yeah, now it's a edge data center.
But who was the validation for you guys? Like, people just said, "Hey, Peter's done a lot, and these data centers look great, and they run great." That's the validation. Is the experience?
Yeah, there is no entity organization that will validate that. Actually, we did a lot of validation. We did a lot of evaluation of existing data centers or data centers that were to be upgraded and modified. The Uptime Institute play a very significant role, and I can not ignore the role they played. Primarily, Ken Brill and Pete Turner, that they were the original developer of the dual core concept. They aggressively lobbied the computer manufacturers to change their design and use dual core. And to a great degree, that has something to do with the work we did. We're the first firm ever to develop, engineering design firm to develop a model and technology to quantify reliability of data centers. We have this program to do reliability modeling and quantify performance, quantify uptime, with respect to cost associated with that. You can always build the most reliable data center in the world by building redundancy on top of redundancy, but what does it mean in terms of cost, and how do you optimize the ratio between reliability and cost, and energy efficiency to a certain degree? And that was one of the things we're able to do through this program. And then came the validation from the Uptime Institute that they came up with the tier system. But that's more of a guideline of how to build a data center. So it was a fascinating.
What was your favorite part of that whole EYP? Like from the time you went there, and there's no doubt. I mean, how many people have gone on to? Because EYP eventually had their own commissioning practice too, right?
Yeah,
and
it was very early. It started, probably the first person I hired at EYP was someone I knew from my earlier days that was a commissioning expert. And I brought him in, and we started the commissioning process. And I got all the clients that we had from the previous firm, because they
couldn't sell design to them. Yeah.
They knew me, and we worked together. And the old firm I left closed doors 6 months later because all the business migrated to the new EYP. But we built a commissioning program, and we did a lot of interesting things at EYP. We were the first firm to attempt to bring bridge the gap between facility and technology to the whole process of. The process of designing a data center is a lot more complicated and complex than just designing the facility. It starts with the whole evaluation of the IT needs. Companies in those days, even today, have a difficult time translating bits into and MIPS into kilowatts and
it's a crystal ball or it's a gas or.
Yeah, there are two different domains, and we built a group within the company that would help companies bridge that gap. And
how long from the time that you went to EYP and created Mission Critical Facilities, and then you started there was this massive sprawl of the market and a huge groundswell with what you were doing. You're finding the people you need, and then how long was it running until you got to the point where, like, was the soup done cooking and there wasn't any more things you could add because you had the design, upstream to everything in the middle to the commissioning at the end, and you even started the consulting stuff that's where you're going at now, right? That was to make the business case to justify exactly what the design needed to be, right?
But it was a bumpy road, simply because the dot-com started in 99 or so. By 2000, after 9/11, 2001, it died. That was the nuclear winter of.
So what happened then to you guys then? How did you survive it?
Well, we're the only firm that there are other firms that started doing data center work because the demand was so great, triggered by the dot-com explosion. But the difference was that we still had our traditional clients, the Chases and Citicorp and the big financial institution, New York Stock Exchange, and so on. So
and they were growing no matter what.
So they continued to grow, and they continued to have needs for, and we were able to keep pretty much all engineers. Other firms were forced to lay people off and so on. And
how big in terms of people did EYP reach that scale? Was it 300-400?
Yeah, at least 400 engineers and plus support. But we have 7 or 8 offices in the United States. We had a presence in. We have an office in London. We had a presence in China, in Dubai. We did a lot of work in Sao Paulo, Brazil. It was a global. It was really a global firm. It was very profitable. It did very well. And then right around the time when the whole business collapsed, a private equity firm based in Boston came to us and say, "We want to invest in your firm." At that time, General Electric also wanted to buy EYP, but we wanted to still have control. We still felt that there is room to grow, and we felt that being absorbed by GE will destroy the company, will destroy the culture. And,
was that the number one thing that you were focused on there?
Well, no. I always wanted to be in the middle of the action. I was very much involved in the design and conceptual things, but also nurturing our people, mentoring, building our offices, and working with our engineers was my top priority, and I really like that. And to this day, there are hundreds of engineers operating at various firms. Some of them started their own firm, very successful, extremely successful. Some of them are working for some of the big hyperscalers, or some of them work for other firms. But I stay in touch with many of them, and I don't think there is anybody that ever worked with me that I don't have a good relationship with, which is very fortunate, and I take great pride from my relationship with the EYP people. So it was a big deal. It's a very important thing for me and for my career.
I don't know. I said this on one of the other podcasts. We were talking about, like, I don't know if there's a data center operator that has had a more profound impact on our space than digital, right? Because look at how many, CEOs that we have for other operators right now that had once at one point worked at digital, or some of them have gone on to work at big, members of the hyperscaler enterprise. But I don't know. There was a few of us that were having cheers, by the way.
Cheers.
Salute. This is, you're going to have to tell me about, you have to finish that story about your McAllen journey and how that whole thing went down. But this is I brought this, this is a gift that Laramie Doris, Laramie back in his Cyrus One days, yonder now.
Yeah.
So I think he got me this as a birthday gift, and I've been waiting for the right opportunity to open it.
Well, that's very kind of you. That's very nice of you. But you should keep it for more.
No,
more
we actually
important occasion than talking to me.
We poured half the bottle out and filled the rest with iced tea before you got here, just because. So, no, but like going back, I don't know. EYP has probably had one of the biggest impacts from the design side on our space. How many people? I mean, like, did you hire like James Warren and Chris Kirchian right out of college? Were they like brand new green engineers when you were scooping up people like that? Because those are there's a lot of firms now that. I'm not saying that KW is an example, but there are a lot of places that you will sit down and they'll be like, "Oh, I'm with this company." I'm like, "Sorry, never heard of that." And they're like, "Well, a bunch of us came from EYP," and that's like the instant validation. Oh, okay. Well, then you guys are legit, So it really did help have a huge impact on our industry, because a lot of your engineers that have gone through the EYP, culture or evolution in their own professional journey have somehow ended up, like Zupan at, an Apple, or, there's a million people that are scattered throughout the industry.
Yeah, and they're very good, James Warren and Chris Sturgeon, extraordinarily successful, great engineers.
Did you get them right out of college? Where did you get those two from?
No, they, I don't even remember. I think, I don't remember, but
I got you.
There are,
I wonder how many of them started with you.
They're still close friends of mine, and
sure.
I always try to help them. And there are many others. It's, as I said, it's a journey. It's it takes a while to build it.
Did you have any other big challenges or setbacks like that, like September 11th or the dot-com boom, that you had to ride through before? Was there any ever point in time in which you're doing this and you're like, because that's exposure, right? You have multiple offices, you have hundreds of souls that you're responsible for making sure that you're helping them feed their family. So all of a sudden you have these huge things that you can't forecast, right?
Yeah, well, yeah.
That's not industry related. It's not like the pent up demand of technology shrunk. It's just.
Yeah, right. The Black Swan, like 9/11, had such an impact, so that the 1-2 punch between .com implosion and 9/11, and the business, stopped, and that was a difficult time in our lives.
What did you learn most about yourself during that time, though, or your partners, your team?
Yeah, keep your faith. If you really believe in something, and you think that you're doing your job, your profession has value, does something good for the world and for society, keep doing it, because it's going to get better. I mean, that's look, I'm not. It's easy to be a Monday morning quarterback, but I was convinced through all these years that the world is going to be dominated by digital. The digital transformation that occurs slowly was the most important thing of happening from a business standpoint in the end of 20th century.
Last year, you said something on stage, and we're going to get to that before you leave today. But it was you're like, yeah, basically in 5 or arbitrarily 6 years from now, AI will be so advanced that there will be nothing that is unhackable. There was something along those lines, because technology is emerging so fast. And
that's true. AI to one extreme, and quantum computing at the other extreme, and everything in between, including blockchain and meta and VR and
So I want to take all those things and go, okay, this is what you've learned, 30 plus years of industry experience to get to where you're at. And you've kind of played at every altitude and airspeed now, having, I want to get to the point where you walk us through. I want to get to, I'm not speed you through it, but I selfishly also want to get to, like, I want to understand your passion for, microgrids and the grid in general. And, what happens when you have, groups like Russia invade Ukraine and take over their, power stations in Chernobyl, or I don't know, but like, how does all those things impact us in the data center space? So like, keep carrying us through, because I do think, there's going to be people that are listening to this. They're going to be like, wow, we all knew EYP. I didn't know that they ever had a headwind. They always seem to have a tailwind, and everything just seemed to be like rolling great for them. And the only challenge was finding people, not customers, right? So good problem to have as a business, right? So, but really, you got to this certain plateau, and then you decided, hey, there's people that have interest in investing in us, whether it's corporate America or private equity. You chose one path because you didn't want to compromise your culture or the productivity that culture created. And then take me back to that part where you're like, okay, this is what we're going to do. And then how it led to, I worked on the HP UYP team, right? So
yeah, that's when we met at the HP.
Yep.
It was, by then it was 2007, 2008. It was time for us to we build this great company. It was doing very well, both financially and in terms of reputation and name recognition and so on. Global firm, and we decided it's time to move on, and we start talking to some companies. We positioned the company not like a design engineering firm, but more of an IT firm, a combination consulting, high-end consulting, and also engineering firm. And that resonated well with some of the big players. And there are quite a few big names that were interested in EYP. And
the rumor was like Dell and IBM were chasing you at the same time. Is that right?
Yeah. And a few other type of companies, but we were the real players were these big technology companies, and HP was the most aggressive, and felt that HP is the right player.
That was Mark Hurd was the CEO at that time.
Mark Hurd was CEO, and Livermore was instrumental. Paul Perez was probably a key catalyst for this process, and it was a good marriage. I made a commitment. I stayed for 4 years. I really enjoyed my 4 years at HP. I met a lot of smart people. I was the managing partner of the consulting business and focused on data centers, but also energy, power, and sustainability. And that was the first time I was really introduced to the concept of sustainability. It was we didn't have the same alarming trends developing today about carbon and green and global warming, but it was starting.
It wasn't as prevalent then as it is now. You're saying,
yeah, right. But it was starting. There were early days, and I started to get exposed to that. But also we continued the innovation. We did a lot of interesting things. For instance, we are the first one. Maybe other people will argue that, but I think we were the first one to develop a modular data centers, and I have a patent on that.
Is that Flex DC? Is that what it was?
The Flex DC, yeah. It was. Now everybody is doing something similar, but that was the first one. I mean, the systems being developed today are better. But we really recognize early that this is the way the industry ought to go. You cannot. You have to find ways to.
Why did you know that? Like, why? What was it? Was it schedule? Was it cost? What? I mean, or was it? I don't know about.
Yes, it was all of the above. It was financial. It was speed to the market. It was flexibility. It was the fear of over provisioning, which is so prevalent in this industry. We had to find a way to standardize, industrialize, if you want, the whole data center business. Historically, for the longest time, it was this custom built industry. But as the industry evolves, matures, grows, it got to the point where you cannot make every new project a custom project. It has to be a lot more efficient. And that's why we went from $20 million per megawatt to maybe $7 million per megawatt. That's quite an evolution.
Standardizing on building blocks. Now, during that time, like, who was the first? Is like, if you were to have to think back, who you've known in this industry the longest, who's still actively involved in this industry? Like, who would it be? Did it?
The longest, probably, I don't offend anybody here, probably Pete Turner. Pete Turner is there. Nikki Haley that started, was one of the first people I hired. That
Are they still, where are they at now? Like, I know you have, like, how long have you known, like, Kevin Timmons or, Furlong or some of the, like,
these are younger guys, but I met them during my EYP
when they were EYP.
Yeah, it was Kevin, was a dear friend of mine to this day. He was running the data center business for Yahoo, and Tom Furlong, he was at Exodus, and he was such a wonderful guy, and he helped me with some issues during the dying days of Equinix.
Navy Academy
of
grad.
Exodus, but not Equinix, Exodus.
Tom's awesome. One of the most, I always felt like he and Darren Dascarolis over there were some of the most unassuming, humble people, right? Because they were just so nice.
At Equinix, yeah.
Well, I mean, I didn't know them at Equinix. I just knew them where they're at now, right? And I remember I would be sitting down with some small retail colo provider, and some guy would be screaming at us about something, and you're talking about like a $250,000 program or something that was small, and he's pounding on his chest and reminding you that he's an enterprise. I'm a data center operator. And then you go sit down with those guys that are spending billions of dollars on stuff, and they're trying to figure out how they can help you be successful in helping them, right? And you're like, wow, that's why I guess what makes these certain people better leaders is, there's a dichotomy there, right? Where I learned that there's people in this space that are trying to be liked, some that are trying to be feared, and then those that are just trying to find some respect. And those ones that have the respect are the ones that seem to command the most loyalty. So watching these people lead was something that was awesome for me because I love this space. Most of my best friends come from this industry. I have friends that I served with in the military that are amazing and are super close. And I talk to guys that I used to wrestle with back in high school all the time. But most of my strongest relationships are from my time that started in this space, right? And I got to imagine that you have, like, this isn't just what we do. This is part of our lifestyle, right? So for you, that's why I'm asking, like, how far back do you go with some of these folks? And like, do you guys ever look at each other and be like, can you freaking believe where we're at and where we started? Because the industry wasn't that big then, right? I'm not trivializing it. And I'm not saying it's big now, right? It's still very ancestral and very small. Everyone knows each other, it seems like. But back then, those conferences were probably way smaller, right?
Yeah, they were smaller, but First of all, I don't think it's that small. I mean, this is hundreds of billions of dollars in size. I think that the world depends on. Without data centers, we will not be where we are. Without data centers, there is no banking, there is no Facebook, there is no Google, there is no Amazon, there is no Apple.
E-commerce, no social media,
People don't. Most people don't even know what a data center is. They look at their phone and they assume that it's all there. It's coming through something in the sky or cloud. They have no concept. And to a certain degree, it's our fault that we didn't.
So listen. So when people ask you, like, "Hey, so what do you do?" Like you go and you meet your, first time you met your future son-in-law, and your daughter's like, "Hey, this is my father. He's an engineer, big old nerd. What do you guys design?" And people are like, "Oh, what do you tell people? What do you tell people that like help someone who's new that's in this space for the first time? They've been in this industry for a year, and people are like, 'Yeah, what are you doing?' Like, 'Well, I do data centers or some area,' and people will look at them cross-eyed like, 'What's that?' So, what do you tell people? What do you tell people data centers are, and how do you describe it?"
Well, talking about that, my son-in-law, which is a great guy, we're very fortunate. Our kids are absolutely wonderful, and their spouses, my sons and my son-in-law and my daughter-in-law, are just beautiful, wonderful people. It just happened that my son-in-law works for Facebook, very successful there, and I think that not that I have anything to do with it. He did it all by himself, but he was able to build a amazing career there because he kind of transitioned to more towards the technology part of the business, more of the infrastructure part of the business. Obviously, he's becoming quite interested in data center because it has a lot to do with what he does for a living. So when I talk to someone and said, "What do you do?" and usually I don't like to talk about myself very much. Tell them that I'm an engineer. Thank you. But
you're welcome.
Explaining once what the data center is complicated in a way, because unless you visualize the whole thing, it's difficult to comprehend. Well, it's a room with computers. Oh, okay. I have a computer at home.
Is that what you tell people? I just build these big rooms full of computers.
Well, yeah. Essentially, in a nutshell, that's what it is, right?
Sure.
There is a little bit more to it than that, but I think people are more interested in not what it is, but what it does. So why do you need a data center? The explanation is that that's where the whole digital world meets. That whether is an email you send to a friend of yours, or you transfer or money goes from your job from your company to your account.
They all understand that.
Everything has to go through a data center. Everything goes through a data center. It goes from one place to another. There is an email or a piece of information or or money or whatever it is. It has to go through a data center. If you all your picture, all your photos that you have on Facebook or on Google, what are they? So they are everything is in a data center. So all it's when you go to your bank and ask for your balance or wants to transfer some money, how does that happen? It's because all that stuff is in a computer in a data centers, and these data centers have tens of thousands of these computers called servers. Then people start comprehending a little bit. It's more, I think it's more difficult. The concept of cloud is a little more difficult to visualize. But I think that I think it's much better than it used to be. I think that the digital transformation is becoming more of a accepted concept than it was a few years back. If you give an example of what happens if, a bank lost the data centers a couple of years ago, and people could not get their money out of ATMs, or they didn't get their paycheck, and a few other important things. That's when it hits home. That's when people start understanding how important something like this is. And then when there's a Facebook, for people that cannot have access to their Facebook account, this is the end of the world. I mean, can you imagine?
Right.
So that's why I'm so passionate about what I do, and that's why I feel so fortunate that I chose, or the destiny chose this career for me. We could have been doing all kind of other things. But coming back to our discussion, when I was at HP, I discovered the notion of sustainability, and then I joined a company called Bloom Energy, because actually, after my 4-year stint at HP, that was my commitment. And after 4 years, I decided I'm ready to retire. And I said, I pay my dues. I don't need to work anymore. And I was retired for almost 2 weeks, and then and then I realized that I cannot. That's not for me. It's not that I don't have other things in my life. My wife and I are very, passionate about opera and ballet. Actually, I sit on the board of a ballet company, and I'm very proud of my art collection. I collect art, and I play. I'm a passionate tennis player. Not very good, but very passionate.
How long have you been playing tennis? Because ever since I've known you, you were always trying to make.
Since I was 30 years old, but yeah, I like it. But I'm not very good. Probably I don't have the right genes. I play golf. Terrible golfer. Horrible golfer.
Yeah, take a number.
But what I'm saying is I have other things in my life, but still, it's not enough. So after a few weeks, I decided I'm going to join this company called Bloom Energy, because I felt that they are one of these companies that could eventually change the world. By then, I started to get more and more into the whole issue of climate change and global warming and carbon. I started to be really concerned about this existential threat to mankind, to our planet. And, this is by no means a political statement. Some people believe in that. Some people do not. Some people don't think that it's such a big deal. Some people think that is the end of the world. I think that, we have to be pragmatic and realistic about that. But even if it's not 100%, maybe it's 90% chance that the world will become a terrible place to live because of this. It's worth pursuing work initiative that will mitigate that risk. I mean, there is no question that there is a risk. So I became quite passionate about this, and data center in particular, although in the grand scheme of things, obviously transportation, automobiles, aircrafts, or power plants, the coal power plants, the oil, gas power plants generate a lot more carbon than what data center consume. Data center, probably of all industries, are more keen on addressing this problem because a lot of them a lot of these companies, they're not called data center companies, but essentially they are technology companies driven by their data centers, whether it's Google or Microsoft or Facebook or Amazon or Apple and a few others. They are so visible. They are so in the everybody looks at them. And so they are probably the most aggressive, the most dedicated companies when it comes to reducing their carbon footprint. They buy more renewable energy than anybody else. If you look at the top 10, 15 companies, the vast majority of them are technology companies. And, as I said, other industry do more damage to the environment in terms of carbon. But I think that the data center industry is more keen on solving this problem, and I think that they can develop technology and processes that could benefit the rest of the industries, the rest of the companies. Since then, I started getting involved beyond what I did at Bloom.
Yeah, what are you doing now? I know you're on like 37 boards probably, or well, I mean, you're involved with the industry probably at the highest level and the most touches. So, like, I know you have a lot of groups that you support, right?
Yeah, I'm involved in probably too many companies, but I'm very passionate about new things, about innovation, things that could make a difference. So, some of them have to do with sustainability and carbon. Some of them have to do with improving the data center business. Some of them have to do with other type of technology that maybe adjacent to data centers, but related to technology and data centers. Most of my work and my involvement is related to data centers, but in general about the technology. And I work with companies. First of all, I work with companies and people that I like. I don't, that's one of the luxuries of being retired. You pick your you pick your work. You work with people that you respect and you like, and for companies that do something that you feel that it's either meaningful or important, or they're gonna companies that will make a difference. And so it's a fairly broad range of companies I'm involved with, whether it's a company that is revolutionizing the way the power distribution and data center is going to be done, and going to reduce the amount of over-provisioning, all the money they spend and sitting idle there.
Is this what Dean gave the presentation on at ECAC?
Yeah. I work with Dean Nelson. And
so for some of the folks that are listening that don't know that company, what's the name of that company?
It's called VPS, Virtual Power Systems, and it has, in my opinion, the most important and the most useful new technology that will improve the way power is distributed and allocated in the data center. So there hasn't been a lot of innovation or evolution when it comes to power distribution, and this is such a big portion of the whole business, both financially or in terms of contribution or reliability. So this will make a big difference.
What will it do? Will ultimately, does it go through and check the blind spots of capacity that's stranded maybe or something, so it aggregates and collects something so that you're really only drawing a certain... What's it doing?
The problem with the data center, as I said before, they're expensive. They cost a lot of money. And probably on average, no more than 40% of the capacity of the data center is used. There are redundancy over redundancies. There are buffering having to do with spikes in demand and computing power required, and that makes the data center itself a very inefficient way to allocate capital. And by optimizing this process, by finding ways to reduce or eliminate these buffers, by finding ways to monetize all this capacity that is sitting in reserve, maybe used once every 5 years, by monetizing that, because you have the ability to do some dynamic allocation of power in terms of SLA or reliability expectation, uptime expectation. You can really improve the utilization. You don't have to build that much capacity, minimize the amount of new construction that needs to be taken place. Certainly improve the bottom line, especially for co-location companies, but for other type of data center businesses. So it has a whole slew of benefits. I think it's a remarkable innovation, and it's going to have a big impact in our business.
What are other things like that? I mean, that seems like that. Does that take up a lion's share of your retirement time dedication? Or are you focus more of?
I don't know. I'm trying to split my time and all kind of other things. Well, there's a company, for instance, which I think I'm very. I find very important, critical, a company that has developed a technology to address one of the biggest problems we have, which is energy storage. Until we're going to resolve the energy storage issue, especially at the grid level, storage that will enable utilities or maybe hyperscale data centers to store gigawatts worth of power for weeks or so.
Is this for like peak shaving? Why do they want to do this?
No, it's not peak shaving. Well, it's think of what happened here in Texas a year ago.
During the winter.
The reliability of the grid is deteriorating rapidly. I mean, it's the aging of the grid. It's the global warming. Ironically, even a proliferation of renewable energy that has the potential to increase the instability of the grid, all the way to some disasters like Fukushima or Sandy or Katrina, or the danger of cyber attacks. All these things make the danger of grid infrastructure, the need to find ways to protect that. But also, even more importantly, how do you leverage the benefits of renewable energy? We're able to develop solar power plants and windmills that are very efficient, and the cost has been going dramatically. When I started this at the beginning of my career, the cost for per peak watt was over $10. Now it's $1. I mean, it's
No kidding.
it's an extraordinary price reduction. But the fact that you have sun or power generated by the photovoltaic panels for 6 hours a day, you still have to keep the lights on for the remaining 18 hours or so. So right now we're shutting down a lot of the coal power plants. We're shutting down some of the nuclear power plants, and replacing them with renewable power, which is a positive thing. But in order to account for all the energy required when the wind is not blowing and the sun is not shining, we're using these peaker power plants. The peaker power plants are all natural gas plants because natural gas power plants can be brought up into service relatively fast, quickly to respond to demands. A baseload power plant like a coal power plant or nuclear power plant, it takes a long time to bring it up full power, days. So you don't want to shut it down. So you have to find a way to support the world while this renewable. So the only way to do that is finding storage as a way to store energy, large quantity of. Right now, it's all done using lithium-ion batteries, but that's not the answer. There's not enough of them. They are too expensive, and the whole lithium battery business is driven by automotive, by Teslas and other electric cars. That's what the drive is, not stationary battery system. Although there are storage facilities, energy storage, using lithium-ion batteries, but there is a lot of interesting work that we're attempting to find a replacement for that. And this is the company I was mentioning here that I'm involved with. It's called Energy Internet Corporation that has developed a amazing new technology using compressed air. Stored in
what's it called again? Compressed air is like a
Energy Internet Corporation. That's the name of the company, and it has developed a unique technology to compress air using a water piston, and this is a isothermal compression. That keeps the temperature pretty constant between the compressed level and free air, and so that's the ability to compress air and then release it and move a turbine and generate electricity will provide, as I said, gigawatts worth of power and store energy for days or weeks. So that could be used for grid level storage, so that the utilities can use that kind of stored energy to compensate for the lack of power delivered by renewable energy sources, or it could be used for a data centers that wants to be 100% green, and there are projects right now using renewable energy with batteries, but with lithium battery you cannot really provide more than 4 hours or so, approximately 4 hours of storage. What you do is remaining 14 hours or so. So this would be a solution. And this company also has other products in the works. Something called liquid air, which is a very interesting technology that will compress the air to the point that it becomes liquid. And then when the transition from liquid to air to gas occur, the volume increases by a factor of 700. So now you can move a turbine and generate electricity that way. It has benefits in terms of hydrogen compression that will also benefit the whole transition to the hydrogen economy.
So what's the barrier to seeing, like, if you were to sit down, Peter, having started, when the industry was officially starting, and now seeing that we're up against, you saw the first few major upticks in this industry in terms of the release of the internet, and then mobile devices, and everyone with a home PC, and now we're talking about AR and VR and AI, and you have autonomous driving vehicles, you have drone technology, you have all the Bitcoin, and you have all these things. And I want to go through all those. We could probably talk about this all day, but at the same time, you have these new emerging technologies that are really geared at being more more sustainable. I'm not sure about what they do from a reliability perspective, but on the sustainability perspective, you're doing the right thing as a steward of, our overall planet. But I don't know how those things pencil out. What do you do when they don't, when those technologies don't advance fast enough to be economically efficient to solve a very scaling challenge that exists? Like right now, like I'd be interested to understand what you think our greatest threats are in the space, right? But you have, real estate is limited, right? We're seeing that in Virginia right now, as people are migrating south, even looking at huge campuses, either, north, closer to Maryland or is further south, south of Manassas. But you're seeing all these emerging markets, secondary markets where, who would have thought that Salt Lake City, when you first started, would be as big, or even Phoenix, quite frankly. And those are major markets now, right? So we're running out of land in certain places, or it just isn't, it's not very cost efficient to go into certain markets now, either because the land is too expensive or the power is, but you have these huge things that are just on the horizon right now. So like, I would imagine since we started, we've hit 2 major plateaus, right? And now we're getting ready to hit, in my opinion, another really massive sprawl, right? As people just continue to adopt more technology and, more eyeball content and video caching and e-commerce and streaming. And what's going to happen? Will that technology keep up or catch up fast enough to be able to really help? I could see how it helps an enterprise, right? Because an enterprise, they're investing more into those things because they have their data centers they're cost centers. They're really there to help them generate revenue, the vehicle under the, the engine under the hood. But if you're a data center owner operator, those people, I'm not going to say are more sophisticated than the enterprise end users, but they are armed to the teeth because they know exactly what that product is supposed to do. And they're the ones that we're spending all that time with you, the engineers, trying to get from 20 million a meg down to sub 6, right? And they're trying to figure out what's the diminishing return for them to where they've driven that down enough to where now there's no more gains in efficiency found on sustainability, or they're doing something that's so advanced, there's not enough talented people that could keep up with the requirements to operate. What are some of the things that you're seeing? Because, you sit on a ton of boards or advisory committees and panels of every kind. And, I saw those images on LinkedIn. You guys, the Infrastructure Masons founders, like you get to be in orbit with all these people that are actually, they're making those decisions that are having some of the biggest impacts on the industry, all the way down to the manufacturers and the labor forces. So when you see these things come together, like, what are your thoughts? Like, what do you see the next transformation being? What are the things that you're concerned about? If you're investing your, the future of your career into helping lead, these sustainability based things that are finding efficiencies and eliminating waste, and what are you going to do when the demand is even greater than what we've ever had in the past? Like what's going to be compromised?
Well, I think you said it all. First of all, it's these are exciting times. If you look at how rapidly the evolution and digital transformation is occurring, we're now talking about the next industrial revolution. We're talking about the Web 3.0. We're talking about the new internet. All these things, and they are happening so fast. In the past, I don't know, it took 50 years for the automobile to really becoming ubiquitous. It took 10 years for the television to become so popular that it's in every home. Now things happen in 6 months or a year, and there is this rapid evolution. And I look at the data center industry, and I've never, been here in this business for a long time. I've never seen growth like this, and sustained growth. And I look at some of these companies, what they are planning to do, the magnitude, the size of that, and it's all predicated upon all these things occurring. but there is the metaverse or the blockchain industry, and one of the companies I'm very keen on, I work with, has developed the infrastructure that will enable blockchain to be what a blockchain ought to be, a global distributed ledger with computers with a global distribution. But in the same time, you see all these these threats, and nothing more critical than this carbon thing that. It's really an existential threat, and when you build hundreds and hundreds of megawatts, actually probably the next 5 years in terms of data center alone, we're going to see, I would say, at least 10 to 15 gigawatts worth of data center being built. That's
globally,
yeah.
What do you think most of that will be outside the U.S.?
About over 45% of all the data centers are in the United States, but the next big destinations are overseas. Southeast Asia is going to be it's growing very rapidly. It's going to be very big. Africa,
really.
All Africa, look at Africa. The population of 1 billion by 2050 is going to be 3 billion. So you see,
how are they going to have enough power?
Yeah, that's right. But like anything else, they don't use telephone lines. They use cellular. They're going to bypass the traditional power architecture that is so prevalent in the world, and they're going to go probably directly to a distributed concept, a distributed generation, on-site generation, microgrids, and things of that nature. It's a very interesting dynamic that will penetrate every aspect of our civilization. You can take any example. Cryptos, as most people think they think back. A lot of people think that there might be just it's pure speculation. It's a fad, and it's going to disappear. But one thing is very clear to me, at least, is that the fundamental concept that says behind cryptos is blockchain, and that's something that is gonna radically change the way we do things in this world. Anything from the way the bank of the future is going to look like, the way we do transaction, all the way to, I don't know, elections, for instance. I mean, everything. NFTs, they came around a year ago, and now everybody talks about NFTs. But the point I'm trying to make is everything comes back to the data center. Everything, the data center is the fundamental component of any kind of
every business,
of every digital transformation occurring in the world. And coming back to what we discussed before about the data center technology companies being so aggressively reducing their carbon footprint, data centers probably today don't generate more than maybe 3% of the total carbon, and that includes traditional conventional data centers and mining operation for Bitcoin. That's probably half of the energy used for data center is for
really?
Bitcoin, for mining, which is amazing in such a short period of time. Even with all the miners being kicked out of China and now looking for
Why
homes.
was that?
Well,
Are they just stressing the grid?
I don't think it was stressing the grid. That was one of the factors, but I think it has more to do about centralized control of the currency. Governments, many governments are not very keen on cryptos simply because it's a way to bypass the central banks, and I think that was behind it. But and then the telcos, the telecommunication piece of IT takes probably twice as much. But altogether, maybe 3.5% of the carbon. And the cement industry alone takes about 7% of.
Oh wow!
So. You don't hear people talking too much about how much carbon the cement industry does, but everybody talks about the fact that I don't know, Facebook builds all these data centers and pollutes the environment, and
they're really not. They're just creating jobs.
Yeah, of course. All these companies are doing a remarkable work
for sure
for doing that. But as I said, it's a process. It's going to take a while for the world to transform itself, and it's not only carbon, but it's water, it's mining,
connectivity.
Yeah, of course. That's without question. That's a big issue.
What do you see as some of the bigger trends then, when you guys are sitting around behind the green curtain of Oz, you're deciding what's going to happen in this space in the next 5 years? What are you guys anticipating seeing? Like, do you see something breaking through, like a trend of some kind that's huge? Like right now, the big trend amongst these hyperscalers, right, is that they're like, either we'll ditch the generators or we'll ditch the UPSs, or, they're just trying to scale back to minimize, everything's retroactive replication on the network now. So they don't need all this bulletproof utility infrastructure, or the stress on the infrastructure itself will be in question. Maybe that's why they're going that direction. But
yeah, I think the biggest trends I see are a much more modular type of infrastructure at every level. I see an effort, and this is an interesting thing. Very early, in my opinion, but I see this happening. I think that the data center is trying to become an integral part of the community, as opposed to be this isolated thing that sits in the middle of nowhere and is isolated from everything else. Building data centers and having it interact with the community, the town, the city, in terms of using the heat generated by the data center, using the water that it's used there, in terms of becoming a recovery center, using the power that is available there to protect against certain incidents, using the power stored in the data center as for demand response, for frequency regulation.
So making each data center like it's a little microgrid, like a closed transition, cogen.
Microgrid, but also integrated in the community. I mean, that's I think that's going to be a very interesting evolution in the whole trajectory of data center transformation. I think that power and microgrids and having these data center having full control of their power destiny is an important thing. Right now, I'm working with a project in various parts of the world, and there are moratorium. You cannot get power in Ireland, for instance. A lot of companies go there. Right? There is a lot of companies want to be in Ireland with their data center for a number of reasons, but they cannot build anything because there is no
Ireland
power.
Said we're out. Yeah.
So they need to find other ways.
Well, they didn't say they're out. They just said they're out in Dublin, right? So AirGrid and them are going to try to figure out how they could open up some power on the other side of the island? There's a couple
It's going
different
to
parts.
take years. It's going to take years. It's complicated, but people go around, find ways around it. They're building their own power plant using recips or fuel cells. Look at Singapore. They had a data center built moratorium that is now almost 2 years old because they felt that data center take too much power, that they also have a big impact on carbon, and it's going to be lifted at one point. But the government there is very keen on developing a set of regulation that will mitigate the impact of the data center.
So that's what I was trying to figure out is like, what are the trends? Like you're reading the tea leaves, you're trying to get to where the puck is going, right? So if someone's listening to this and they're like, how do I pivot my business to be able to be in a position like your story, was you came over here with a chip on your shoulder and you were hungry and you didn't have much and you were just going to be successful no matter what. And you rose to the highest level of this industry, globally recognized like that. And then you have other people that are following behind you, right? Someone else is showing up here and they have the same, years ago. And, my thing for them is like, where's the industry heading now? Right. And where should they go if they want to get ahead of it? Or if you're trying to figure out how to position yourself or your business to where you could have more than your fair share of the opportunities as the market continues to evolve. What's your advice? What are your now based on your input or your predictions of some of the things you're going to see, and what's your advice to those people that are getting into the industry for the first time?
You know what I think that Niels Bohr said that prediction is very difficult, especially when it has to do with the future. I wish I would have a way to predict the future, but I think that specifically about this business is it's bigger in size, so. Big is important here, and now there is a data center that is being built in somewhere in Asia that is going to be on data center 800 megawatts. I was telling you that
that'd be
when I started building data center, there were 2 megawatts.
Sure.
So this trend continues, and you see some of these big projects. Finding ways to reduce energy efficiency is kind of approaching the level of diminishing return. I mean, the PUE is approaching 1.1 and even below 0.1 at certain location around, not in Singapore, not in Miami, but in other places around the world. This energy efficiency innovation got to a point where you cannot go much more efficient than it is. But reducing energy, now that's a different thing. I think that cooling the data center is clearly going to higher densities, and different kind of cooling that are more efficient, that are more environmentally friendly, and then that are less expensive, are a way to address that. And whether immersion cooling or direct chip cooling, cold plate cooling, or some other hybrid configuration is a very interesting. A lot of people work in that domain. I think that finding the right energy storage solution is going to have an enormous impact.
Interesting.
And, whether is a new kind of solid-state battery or glass battery or flow battery or liquid metal battery. I think that finding a way to bridge the gap between power and energy when it comes to storage, using something, graphene, for example. Graphene is this miracle material that will enable a equivalent of an ultracapacitor to have enough. Capacitors are very good power devices. They are not very good energy devices. A battery, on the other hand, is a great energy devices, but in terms of power, they're rather lousy, sluggish. But finding a way to develop a solution that has both power and energy stored. Now that's going to be the holy grail of the storage energy, and I think graphene will probably be the answer there. I think that hydrogen has indeed a future, unless we finally break the glass ceiling of fusion energy, and we finally able to.
Do you see that coming? Is that on the horizon?
You know what they said about fusion? It's the technology of the future, and will always be the technology of the future. It's going to be done in 30 years, and it's always going to be done in 30 years. I think that there is for the first time. In a long time, I see significant progress there, but even with that, it's going to take a long time, many years until you can build sufficient fusion power plants to feed the enormous energy appetite of the world.
Well, besides all that technology, like, what's your favorite part of this whole industry? Like, you got to have some crazy stories, having been around for...
The best part, for me, the people. I built so many friendships, just like you said. When I decide to retire, more or less, one of the main reasons why I'm staying still active is because I like the people I work with. I really enjoy the friendship, the camaraderie built over the years with these people, and my relationships, my friendships, my contacts in this industry are enormously important to me. And once again, and the other thing is that this industry has been so good to me. It gave me so much. It's time for me to give something back, and that's why I'm involved with a lot of enterprises and organizations that are, not for profit. I'm on the board of the Institute of Environment and Sustainability associated with UCLA. I'm on the board of advisory board for Lyle School of Engineering, associate with SMU, University of Southern Methodist, that has a data center program, probably the first program in a major college that prepares students for a career in data center business.
It's pretty amazing, actually.
Yeah, very, very involved with Masons and other mentoring, and I'm really passionate about helping this industry evolve and grow, and it's unfortunate that I don't see more people transitioning to this industry. Probably, it's our fault to a certain degree that we didn't do enough to promote.
We can't even explain to people what we do. People are like, "What do you do?" I'm like, "Data centers." They're like, "What is that?" I'm like, "Oh, it's tough. Every time you do it, it's like a whole new narrative too. Sometimes you're trying to work on it, but you're right. I mean, it's how do people that have either just got into this space or those that are thinking about getting into this space, like, I like to always, when it's time to bring it home, and I'm sensitive to your schedule, I know you're flying back out in a little bit, but that is one of the things, is like, what would be your advice to those people that want to be in this space? Why would they want to leave if they are engineers and got a degree in something else and they could go get into health, life science, or industrial, commercial, some other kind of engineering? Why would they want to put their career or invest their career into this space?
I think that it's more dynamic. It's more interesting. I think that it's transforming itself more often than any other industry. I think that it's an industry that is going to be around for a long time. I think that, and even from a career standpoint, I think that the compensation is higher in this. That's important for recent graduates or kids that are in freshmen or sophomore in college. It's an industry that it's global. It gives you opportunities to work in many places, and it's a very broad in terms of scope. You can be an electrical engineer, or a mechanical engineer, or an environmental engineer. You can be a computer science engineer. You can specialize in cybersecurity or in fire protection. I mean, there are so many components to these. And that's one of the things that makes it difficult. Most engineers are specialized in a certain discipline, or electrical or mechanical or whatever. But to be a real star in this industry, you have to have a broad view of all the components, all the elements that comprise a data center industry. And you know this. I mean, with what you do, you have to be involved in so many building blocks of a data centers. What is the physical elements, but also the electrical distribution and the cooling and fire protection and security and monitoring and BMS and operations and maintenance, and I mean there is it's maybe I'm a little subjective here, but I think it's a more interesting of all engineering disciplines. You could be you can be a scientist, you can work for JPL or SpaceX, and those are also great career path. But this is I think that this is broader in scope and gives a young potential candidate many more options and career path.
So what would be your advice though? So that's great advice for folks that are like maybe in the last year of school or something, and they're trying to figure out which path to kind of go down. What about those that have gotten into this space? They were here for a year or two, and they kind of came in maybe towards the tail end of COVID, and the world was a dumpster fire. So they never really got a chance to kind of see the whole, like I've always found like the industry is small because you would go to there's a certain amount of events that you could go to, trade shows, conferences, whatever. And you could kind of see those, not the same people every time, but you kind of start rolling in your own little herd or your own little pack. So maybe having started here at a time in which things were completely not normal, right? Because the industry, it didn't shut down. I mean, we were growing dramatically throughout COVID, right? But they didn't get a chance to see the industry while it was, in full stride. What's your advice to those that are here now? If it's anything different than, hey, listen, I agree with you. I've always tried to explain to people, with one of our brands, we're bringing on folks all the time, and I get the opportunity to meet these people that are coming into the industry for the very first time. And I'm always fascinated to talk to them about like, hey, so what made you pick this or that? And I tell them that I've never seen a space reinvent itself as aggressively or as often as HARS does.
Right.
And to that end, that's why I've always felt like experience is great, but willingness or hunger to learn, aptitude and desire to want to always be evolving, that's even more important, and the advice, that I have for people that have been around for a year, when I talk to them, I say, if this was baseball, I'd like to think of myself as someone who's played every position on the infield and most of the positions on the outfield at some point in my career, right? So you're right. You get to do a lot of cool things. I get to work for a lot of cool companies, right? Those people that are here, what's your advice to them? Like, hey, understand the space or become a subject matter expert, what you're doing first, or just get out there and start introducing yourself and
Well, my advice would be stay relevant, stay current. Just like you said, this industry is changing so rapidly. There's so much going on every day. If you don't keep up, you become obsolete very quickly. The key here is to, as much as possible, stay current, read, go to conferences, maybe publish.
That's the theme of this whole podcast, stay relevant. That's going to have to be, that's awesome.
Yeah, stay relevant. That's the most important thing. Build your own brand, build your own, you can only build it if you really can give something, can produce something. It's not easy. I mean, if you look at the number of publication, number of articles, but also if you look at how many things are changing on a weekly basis in terms of technology and innovations and new products and regulation, and you can. It's not like you learn something in school, you start working, and you do the same repetitive things, and you're very good at that, but that's it. Here, unless in 3 years, unless you adapt and adjust, you're going to become redundant. And also, I mean, it's easier said than done, but try to be the best at what you do. I mean, try to show your coworker and your boss and your peers in the industry that you are a forward thinker, that you're on cutting edge, and you identify new products, new technologies, new solutions, and you bring them with you to your workplace and whatever you do. It's I think that makes your professional life a lot more interesting and exciting, and it might not be everybody's cup of tea, but if you really want to be successful in this business, you have to work on it. You have to, and when I'm saying work on it, not necessarily do your job, but work on it and building your portfolio of knowledge. So.
Do you have any regrets? Is there anything that you've done in your time in this space where you've, like, if I go back, like one of the things that someone had asked me once about you, is there like, do you think that he ever wanted to be like a CEO of a data center operator? And I was like, it's interesting. I've never talked to you about that, but like, is there anything that you haven't done that you wish that you did? Or is there anything you did that you're like, man, I wish I could have sidestepped that one?
Yeah, of course, there are a few things, but in the same time, more importantly, I think, is that I have to be thankful for what this industry gave me, and life is. There are many other things in life that matters. I was very fortunate because my family, because my kids, because they're my grandkids, because they're their families. I mean, that's probably the most important thing in anybody's life. And but if you find something that you like, that you're passionate about, I mean, that's probably the greatest the greatest thing that one can get, other than the joy of your family. But most people at my age play bingo and move to Florida, waiting to die there. But I'm not ready to do that yet. It's just there are too many exciting things out there that
too much fun.
So,
all right. Well, look, as we wrap it up, I guess what I'll do is, I always love to share. I share advice that you give me sometimes, and you probably don't remember all the times. But like I think if I had to, I could remember the very first advice that you gave me was years ago. It was like DCD, New York City. It was the Avenue of the Americas. It was Mark Ascalisi, I think, may have introduced us, and I asked you for advice, I think, and you probably don't remember this, but you're like, be careful of the toes you step on today, this industry, because one day they may be connected to the ass you'll have to kiss. And then when you came out for DCAC Live last September, remember, I just randomly bumped into you in the restaurant before you were grabbing a quick bite. You just landed, and I was trying to make the rounds real quick, and I ran up to you. I'm like, Peter, quick, before I forget, give me some advice. And your advice that day was help everybody you can.
Never ask anything in return.
And never ask anything in return. And no matter what you do, don't ever fuck anybody over. And I was like, damn, still rocking that advice. So my question for you before I let you go then is, what's your advice for me now?
I don't think I'm in a position to. You're such a successful guy, and I'm honored. It's a privilege for me to be your friend. I think that you built such a great career, and I think that in a relatively short period of time, you're still very young, and I think that you just the business you built is very successful. I think it's a tough business. There's a lot of competition, but you're able to carve a niche for yourself, and in such a competitive business, you have done very well. And I think that the fact that you are growing this business, but at the same time you're building this relationship and contacts, and pretty much everybody who knows you likes you. I mean, that's a very important thing, because you never know when you're going to need help from someone, and being a real friend and being loyal and being supportive, as I discussed before, it's very important. You can never do it all by yourself. You always, no matter what, you're always going to need friends. You're always going to need support, and you're going to get it only if these people genuinely want to do it, because either you have done something for them, you help them, or because your personality. So I think that all I can say is I can predict the future here. You're going to continue to be very successful, and you're going to build a great business.
Well, listen, Peter, I appreciate it. And it's an honor to have you here. It's a privilege to be able to spend so much time with you. I know that everyone's always trying to get a little bit of your time, and you were so generous to give so much of it to us today. So to that end, salutes to the McAllen 18.
Yeah.
And it's so much fun to sit down and talk with you. I really do enjoy every moment. So thank you again. And thank you to all of you that decided to listen. I hope that there was something that you took away from this podcast where, like, every time I talk to these people, I learn so much more about their backgrounds. Like, I had no idea you showed up with $50 in your pocket and had a windfall. Like, imagine that. You should have showed up with $500 in your pocket and got another $500. And I'm just saying. But,
no, it was still $50.
But this is an amazing story, and I appreciate it. I hope that maybe someone's listening. Maybe someone else has showed up to the country and get into this industry, and they don't have much either, but they're inspired by your story, and they have an impact.
The great thing for me is as opposed to most other people, I really do appreciate what I got. I really do appreciate what I have, and a lot of people take this country and their life for granted, but there is no free lunch in this world. And once again, I was very fortunate. I was very fortunate because I was able to come to this country. I was very fortunate because this industry embraced me, and I was very fortunate because I was able to build a career, and very fortunate because I got such a great family. So
yeah, man, you're very blessed, man. There's no doubt.
If I only can get my golf and tennis game to go, then I'll.
Something tells me you're probably a scratch golfer. My luck, you're probably just playing.
No.
Well, listen, thanks again, Peter, and thank you for all the listeners. And man, I really enjoyed this session. I hope everyone else did too. So for you that are listening to this on your morning workouts or on your drive back and forth, take the time to really process this stuff. And the advice I'd give you is stay relevant.
Thanks,
Peter. Appreciate it.
Thank you.